Is Shadow a good guy? Of course he freed thousands of worlds and clapped cheeks of many bad guys. How could he do something bad? Those of you who ask this question, you guys have skipped the intro. Here is quick refresher.
Once I was a great, invincible warrior, and no one dared to stand in my way.
Still didn't notice? This guy literally states he searched for a worthy battle, that he stomped whoever got on his way. He opened the gates. Not bad, you say? It says he was prohibited to do so, to put every human being under danger of the unknown. And we aren't even mentioning what bro did in Shadow Fight 3. Before you get mad, telling in the comments that my channel sucks, this video will also feature good things Shadow did, you probably have never heard of. Even though it may sound crazy. But Shadow became a role model for countless warriors across thousands of worlds. He was the one who alongside his friend found an entire faction. At one point he was considered to be the greatest hero the world has ever seen in history. No matter how we look at Shadow, it's no surprise he had a huge impact on the story. Who was Shadow before we get to play as him? He was a ruthless warrior, he had no mercy, and didn't spare a single soul that got on his way. Look at countless bodies left behind him, as he made them regret being born. He was confident and arrogant to a point, he considered no one was worthy of fighting him. Shadow had an insane ego. This pride has led him to opening the gates. A mortal with a human body thought he could handle all the problems that would be brought by the gates. How selfish you need to be to do something so dangerous. And risk all the civilians getting squished by alien forces? However, this thinking misses two important facts. At the time Shadow was punishing warriors severely, all the young enthusiasts searched for fame and desired recognition. So, Shadow wasn't some kind of a tyrant who was soloing the entire world. He was just a brat who wanted to prove everyone wrong. And about the gates. They were built long time ago to seal and avoid the threats that caused fear in everyone. Even though it was good at preventing Titan from immediately wiping out Sly's scam business, the solution wasn't permanent. Someone as crazily smart and powerful as this dude could figure out a way to reach humanity sooner or later. Shadow was the one to remind everyone about the problem again. Who is the first one to meet you when you start the game? It's Sensei. Shadow decided to return to him. Now, some might say it didn't really matter, but hold on. Can you remember how Shadow started discovering seals? Because Shadow returned to his town, where his sensei resides, and where links can be found. He managed to locate the blue seal. And because Sensei told Shadow about his missing student, they went to Hermit's school. Which means if Shadow was too arrogant to return to his sensei, he would have never discovered Hermit's town on his own. Maybe he would, but it would be too late. Not to say, he would also have troubles finding Sly, and even if he found him, there is no guarantee he'd end up right at the moment to Wasp's town. As you can see, simply Shadow deciding to return to his sensei was a very smart and lucky decision. A big event that every one of you missed is Shadow accepting Mei as his assistant. How many of you pressed no when Mei asked to help you out? I don't think that many people did. But regardless of what you say, Mei does become your helper. If Shadow never accepted Mei's offer, a lot of the story wouldn't happen at all. Shadow's decision to take her in his journeys meant a lot throughout the story. Lynx is the guy who had his own gang and, to put it lightly, was involved in a series of street crimes. His order of assassins basically exists for that purpose. Shadow was the one to make a quick reality check for the cutthroats and to reassure civilians that they're somewhat safe. The town likely remembers Shadow till this day. Hermit's secret was a mystery, everyone wanted the power of magic. This guy is still a demon and it's quite dangerous for him to have a lot of followers. And again, if only Hermit knew the secret of magic at the time. Who would be responsible for causing so much destruction to the town? Many young fighters were lured to know the power, but Shadow brought a change. A significant part of those followers started pursuing martial arts instead of following the demon. Shadow was the one to free many underage innocent youngsters from Butcher's forced labor. This was such an act of honor, even Butcher's ex-wife supported him. Imagine how many kids would suffer if it weren't for Shadow to clomp the monster. The pirates of the town near the coast were also going on a rampage. As the pirate king died, they chaotically robbed, murdered and caused havoc within the region. Shadow showed them what it means to be punished severely, taught the spoiled daughter of the king how dangerous things can get in politics, and refusing to elaborate further, continued his journey. Widow was enslaving countless men with some weird magic tricks up her sleeve. You can see how these poor guys have donated all their saving to a streamer called Widow. Even Sly decided to send all his riches to her. But Shadow reminded all her fans that they might have a better goal in their lives. Shogun's steel fist on a poor town was crushed. Loyal soldiers saw fear in their commander for the first time. A brutal defeat was a sign of hope for the tortured civilians who had to live under severe conditions of Shogun's rule. Shadow deciding to save Mei had an underappreciated impact on the story. Didn't meet, a lot of the story might have never happened, just like with Sensei. Some might call these guys fodder. But they're the guys who tried everything to put an end to Titan's terrific actions. Shadow brought hope to them. He showed them what true strength is. They would later on return to their worlds and tell legends about a warrior who never gave up. Looters were taught a lesson to not rob even in the darkest of times. Shadow's persistence made Shroud really mad and caused many rumors to spread around the army of Titan. Who knows, if Shadow wasn't this stubborn, would he have such a reputation? The main hero was also responsible for bringing light to the long-ago forgotten Stone Grove. In fact, his legacy has been passed on through memories there. And the main event of defeating Titan probably needs no explanation. You all know how Shadow helped so many worlds and numerous heroes were inspired by his deeds. Thanks to Shadow, the race of ancients was able to slowly start restoring itself. The new era began. In Shadow Fight 3, Shadow is famous all across the world. But as a result of Titan deciding to turn into a bag of explosives, all the Shadow energy starts acting weirdly. A living entity called Shadow Mind emerged, and you know what? This dude suits a horror game much better. By the way, you probably remember a lot of Titan's underlings mentioning Shadow energy. About Shadow surviving lethal injuries not because of plot armor, but rather this weird dark stuff. This energy started spreading around the human world. In the new world there are different opinions about what to do with Shadow energy. Shadow thought it needs to be destroyed. His followers and supporters gathered around the kingdom, which later would become Legion. Shadow alongside the king founded a faction. This period was the peak of Legion's glory. No one dared to challenge the Legion. And there were no middlemen in their government who would mess things up. The king had all political power, while Shadow's might protected Legion's prosperity. You could say he had a lot of legacy left in the Legion. When the dangerous disease of Scourge infected many people across the world, and shadow beasts roamed the lands, Legion didn't worry much. At those times, Shadow was still within the Legion. While many warriors fell at the presence of contagious Scourge, Shadow alone stomped the monsters at an instant. Shadow with Mei had the biggest influence on the story of Shadow Fight 3, since they made the main protagonist of the game. Well, the exact day of Shadow's descendant being born didn't end very good. And it was Shadow's influence on the story again. Mei died, Shadow became mad, and likewise to many modern parents went for milk. However, unlike most modern parents, this guy started building a machine to alter reality and create a new world to revive Mei and find happiness. You can learn about how that happened watching this video. But besides, this event that mostly was caused by Shadow himself, had the biggest impact on the story. The main hero of the story, Shadow's son, becomes an orphan of war, which was started by the three great factions over Shadow. The king's daughter survived Scourge, but she was dangerous to be around with. As the king died, he asked the only person who could withstand the disease to take care of his daughter. Shadow went to an unknown location, promising to the dying king that he'll take care of Moira, king's daughter. No one really sees Shadow after these events. During his absence, a lot of events take place. But most importantly, the entity that appeared after Titan's defeat, and the one that interfered when Mei was giving birth to Shadow's son, transformed into a sphere. Nobody had an idea about what this sphere was, but it was dangerous and powerful. It got destroyed due to some events. If you want to know the details, just watch the full story of Shadow Fight 3. And after that, folks started whispering that a mighty warrior of the past, the legendary Clapper, Shadow, had returned. Shadow starts his plan of reviving Mei. Even though he doesn't know, this plan doesn't work. In fact, it just creates a loop of events that happen again and again. But back to the human world. To achieve his goal, Shadow returns to the Legion that he founded a long time ago. He sees some lazy dudes who claim to govern the faction, as well as Queen Yolanda, who is the daughter of the deceased king. She also was quite unpopular among the Legion. However, due to her ruthless actions and strength, no one dared to overthrow her. And you know our boy Shadow wouldn't hesitate to clap all of Legion's rulers and the queen together in just one day. What happens next is at the same time impressive and scary. Shadow starts an entire war, except it's rather a massacre than a conflict. Shadow wiped out the dynasty that was so large and had a decent army, and the heralds, who had countless tricks up their sleeves, also feared as masters of handling shadow energy. But despite all that, they were simply fodder facing the guy who defeated the final boss of Shadow Fight 2. As a result of his assaults, a lot of children lost their parents and became homeless. Many nations suffered. People had to starve, peaceful towns turned into trenches. This was the darkest and most cruel influence ever had on story of Shadow Fight. Even at the early moments of his life, where he was a brutal warrior, his reputation wasn't even close to this. As no one was able to stop Shadow, his son finally came to him. Shadow had many unfair advantages, but he couldn't defeat his son, who inherited his own strength, persistence, May's talents as well. The humanity, together with the Void Titan's world and all the universe itself, is destroyed after the battle. The lore gets very complex, but we're here for Shadow's impact. So how did he impact the story afterwards? The world was recreated again with a little different conditions, but each time Shadow was stomping everyone to build his accelerator, believing it would revive May. It continued until Shadow realized that he was wrong. He said sorry to his son and decided to help him. Shadow's help was quite useful, as he spent unimaginable amount of time fighting copies of the main villain to make him weaker. At the end of story, Shadow is dead, as the main villain eliminates his existence entirely. But luckily his son comes victorious and revives his dad. Shadow's adventure is finally over.